Happy Thursday morning, English 108. I'm just making a quick video here to update you a little bit on what's going on in the course, where we're headed, and to really touch on some things that I hope you're picking up so far, even in the class. This is going to be pretty customary for me to create a short video. I'm going to try to keep them relatively brief. My goal will always be to keep them under 5 minutes, but we'll see how I can do. To sort of reflect on what we just did and to point you in the direction of where we're heading. And so I hope that everything is working well for you on the Blackboard end of things with the class. I really appreciate the introductory emails. I really enjoy seeing where people are coming from and where people are heading in their careers. It's always really instructive for me. It helps me sort of think about the class and the types of things that we're going to do in a particular class. So thanks again for completing that assignment. So one of the first things I wanted to do in this class was get you acclimated to what a good email looks like. And the reason for that is because we know that the average worker spends about 20% of their working life writing. And that may seem hard to believe, but actually the average person spends almost 2 hours a day reading and responding to email. And so that's why it's so important for me. If you think about that, that equates to just about one work day a week, which is pretty incredible. And so it's really important for us to write really good professional emails. Not only do they help us get work moving along really well in the workplace, but they also are a place where we can make our first impressions. It's a place where we can establish that professional identity and expertise that we hope to project most of the time through writing. So I want to just touch on the things that I think are most important about a really good email. The first thing is you want to make sure you have a really good subject line. And the subject line is important for a number of reasons, but the most important reason really is that it gives the recipient a snapshot of what's in that email. And that's important because in a professional environment, we may be receiving anywhere between 15 and 100 emails a day, and we need to be able to prioritize which ones we open and which ones we respond to first. So it's really important for us to have a good subject line, and that subject line should indicate exactly what that email is referring to. We don't want to be too generic. We want to be super specific. And so if you're trying to set up a meeting for Tuesday, don't just say meeting. Say meeting request Tuesday. So again, the more specific we can be with those subject lines, the better. That's a really helpful thing to do for our readers. The other thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're including the right amount of information in an email. There's nothing worse than getting an email that's 6 or 7 pages worth of text. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to try to stick to one piece of business per email. Now, sometimes we can break that rule, and you'll know when it's appropriate to break that rule. But we want to keep emails, relatively brief. It's a relatively brief format. If it's something, really needs that type of dialogue or that type of thoroughness, we may want to pick up the phone and make a phone call. So that's another thing we want to think about with email. Is it really the appropriate channel to be carrying out this work? Another thing that's really important, especially when you're making these initial contacts with people, always use a formal greeting. Something, when I say formal, it could be relatively informal, actually. You could say, hello, Mike, or hello, Bob, or good morning, Cindy, or dear Mr. Robinson, or whatever. But it's always a good idea to have that formal greeting. Make sure you have a clear opening sentence. One of the things that we're going to talk about a lot in this class is that people are busy, and reading really gets in the way of other really productive things. And so we want to put the most important information first. So make sure that you have a really good, clear opening sentence that states the subject of the email. And sort of in some ways, we want to work in order of importance. So we want to put the most important information first, and we always want to leave the reader knowing what the next step is. What do we need from them? Do we need them to forward a report? Do we need them to follow up? Is this just a point of information? What's the next course of action? Writing in the workplace is always about inspiring action, and email is a place where action can either be inspired or it can get bogged down. It's remarkable when I go into workplaces and work with folks on their writing. One of the things I routinely hear from folks in the workplace is that they waste so much time on email, and it's partly because folks include too much stuff in their email. They don't state clearly enough what they need as a result of the email. The email is poorly organized. It's hard to refer to, and so we can really save a lot of productivity and a lot of time and ultimately a lot of money and dollars by being better at writing emails. The other thing is, you want to make sure that you have a good closing, sincerely, thank you for your time, etc. And again, that's a place maybe sometimes to reiterate what the course of action needs to be. Always a good idea if you're under a timeline or time is sensitive to make sure that you indicate that very clearly in the email. And so, those are some of the really important things when it comes to email. The other thing that you might want to consider, use short, well-formed paragraphs. That's something you're going to hear me talk about a lot this semester. It's a concept I call chunking, but there's really no need for us to write in long, dense paragraphs. The more we can break those paragraphs up, the easier it's going to be for our reader to read that email, and also the easier it's going to be for that person to go back to and refer and find information in the email that they need. So those are some really important things about email. Obviously you want to check your spelling and your grammar and those types of things. Email really is becoming a more formalized method of communication over time. It can be used as a legal record. So you want to make sure that you're really precise and really professional in that platform. It's really easy to conflate email with other forms of digital writing, Facebook posts, tweets, text messages, but really in a professional setting, you want to treat it in the same way that you would treat any other type of formal correspondence. And you always want to put your best foot forward. I hear all the time from employers also that they can tell a lot about a person and their professionalism by the way that they compose an email. So please do take that seriously. One of the things that I'll ask is that when you email me, with needs or questions about the course, that you use this and practice this. It's super important. For some of you, this is probably really old hat, but for some of you, maybe you haven't had to use email as much. So, keep those things in mind. The UNC reading is super helpful. So, switching gears and looking ahead, we're really setting ourselves up for two things. One is that I wanted you to do that assignment where you look at another course's textbook and think about the ways or the decisions that the writer has made to make that text reader or user friendly. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about throughout the semester, and so this assignment kind of sets the stage for the rest of the semester. But we really want to think about, as technical writers, how can we make someone's task of reading as easy and as useful as possible? And if you think about it, that's really the job that a textbook writer has. They are ultimately trying to help you learn new material, and so they have a very particular audience in mind. They have a very particular purpose, and they're really trying to pull out all the stops and all of the techniques that they have at their disposal to help you understand this new material. And ultimately, as emerging experts in your field, as emerging line workers, welders, nurses, medical assistants, you name it, you're going to be in a position many times in your career where you have to teach somebody something or educate somebody about something. And so we want to sort of take our pointers from the textbook writer and see what types of things we can do to make that reading experience more reader friendly. And so I'll follow up on Sunday with another mini lecture that sort of shares with you what I see happening in most textbook chapters, and I want to just talk about some of the tools that we have at our disposal. And what that's going to do is that's going to segue into our first major assignment, which is the resume. And so what I wanted to do, rather than start right off and blast you with information, was to find out what you know about resume writing and what you know or what you think are the most important qualities of a resume. And from that, we'll ultimately move into some readings and some activities that help us begin to develop that resume. But let's start just with a basic brainstorm of, here we are in a position where we have to share our professional and work history with somebody, and we have to put that on a sheet of paper. What are the best practices? What can we possibly do as writers to communicate that information clearly and usefully? And usefulness is a term that you're going to come up against a lot in this class, but ultimately we're trying to make all of our documents useful. We want to make it so that our reader doesn't have to exhaust themselves trying to get the information that they need. And ultimately, again, that's going to save time and productivity in the workplace. So that's sort of where we're at. That's where we're heading. I hope that you learned something about good email writing. I can't tell you enough how important that is. I can tell almost immediately what folks are like based on their emails, and I'm not alone in that. So take that very seriously and keep that UNC reading handy as a reference that'll help you down the line. If you have any questions or concerns about the course, please let me know. I've graded all of the syllabus quizzes that I've received to this point. If you have any questions about the syllabus going forward, please follow up with me about that. Otherwise, good luck on your work this weekend, and I'll be posting week number 2 probably either Saturday or Sunday so that those who want to get a jump start can. And I really appreciate your diligence so far in the course. Thanks.